Hey guys, Jasmine here. I have been really bad at making videos lately. Mostly just because I have like a lot to say, and a lot to sort of put into one video. And also just I've been feeling really cruddy because of the perfect storm of Parkinson's, which is what I really want to talk to you all about today. Um, yeah, a lot of things that have happened in the past month, even just the past 2 weeks, have really taught me a lot about my sort of original decline. Um, and if you haven't watched some of my other videos or don't know the details of my story, so my original decline. When I was 14, I started with my Parkinson's symptoms, didn't have any diagnoses or treatments until I was 18. When I was 18, I started taking PD meds, and it was like coming back to life again. First, I needed 3-cinnamate a day. Cinnamate being carbidopa-levodopa, it's like the main Parkinson's medication, the dopamine replacement. And I had done really well on 3 a day for about 9 months maybe. And then it just wasn't cutting it anymore, and so I needed 4.5. That worked again until it was about like a year and a half, 2 years almost. No, it was about a year and a half after my initial 3 pill dose, and then I needed 6, and so that went on. And then I was having really bad fluctuations between my dosages, and we started me on Azlite, which like smooths out the dosage, keeps dopamine in your system for longer. At this time, we were operating under the assumption that my diagnosis was something called dopa-responsive dystonia. It's a PD mimic disorder, essentially. It's like you have all the PD symptoms, and Cinnamate works for you. It's like it's a metabolic error. So like you lack an enzyme that you need to make dopamine. So typically, if you replace dopamine, most people do pretty well. Some people don't really get like the full replacement, like the full effects. Like some people still have a pretty significant disability, but for most people, they're at least stable within that disability. But me, I just kept needing more and more and more. And so I had a really bad case of it until I got dyskinesia, which was almost exactly 2 years after I started. It was October. I had just turned 20. We started my levodopa treatment on October of 2012 when I just turned 18. It was, now it was 2014. And I had dyskinesia from Cinnamate, which is like this involuntary response. My body was shaking, flailing uncontrollably. It was really scary at first. But that was levodopa-induced dyskinesia. That was sort of the very beginning point of my decline. And I declined really fast, really sharply. So, yeah, the decline, 8 months. It was 8 months of decline. Started with the dyskinesia. That week they said, okay, lower Cinnamate to stop the dyskinesia. I lowered to 4-cinnamate, but then I couldn't walk. And then they added a medication called amantadine. And amantadine flared my orthostatic hypotension tachycardia. So I was like passing out every time I stood up. Basically, my blood pressure would drop and my heart rate would skyrocket. My highest recorded heart rate from that was 171 just from standing. That's not so good. My lowest blood pressure was 64/52. So yeah, it was getting really bad. So but it was have the medication that really flares that symptom, or having dyskinesia, or having just horrible muscle spasms. Sorry to yawn. Horrible muscle spasms to where you can't walk. There are no good options. I ended up choosing the orthostatic hypotension tachycardia because at least I could really hydrate and drink a bunch of water and salt tab it up and try to get by. But then medicines just sort of stopped working for me. Like I needed more Cinnamate. I took 8 Cinnamate, and that was sort of the most I could do without getting like really bad dyskinesia. When I added the amantadine, my body was just breaking. I was exhausted. I was sleeping all the time. I went from pretty active and doing all right to just like barely functioning. It was pretty clear that within a couple months, I had sort of entered that stage 4 category where you really can't walk unassisted. You fall all the time. It's just dangerous. And it's so painful, and your body just is uncooperative. I had this one day where I woke up and I could not move or talk, and so, they called 911 because I was pretty much unresponsive, even though I was completely conscious, but I couldn't communicate with anybody. I just couldn't move or talk. I was freaking out. And the last thing I remember that day was, they took me in an ambulance to the hospital. I remember them just pushing muscle relaxants, trying to jumpstart my body again. And so things like that were happening. My body was just not cooperating. It was freezing all the time. I could barely move. It was so bad. I was on so much medication. So much medication. And so I had deep brain stimulation surgery. And I had deep brain stimulation surgery twice. I had this side and then this side. So the left half of my body was fixed for 6 months before the right half of my body got fixed. 6 months later, so it was June of 2015 and December 2015. Okay, but during this time leading up to DBS, when my body was declining, I was also losing the ability to eat. And I had really had gastroparesis symptoms for years. I remember very specific bloating when I was about 16, early signs. And when I was about 18, I just sort of lost my appetite. Sorry. Okay, sorry for the yawn. I lost my appetite when I was 16, where I was 18, and everybody blamed Cinemat. We all said, oh, okay, it has that side effect. Sometimes it can make you not hungry. And so as time went on, I was just forcing myself to eat. I'd have to remember, set alarms on my phone to, get lunch and dinner. And if I didn't, I'd forget, and just, it'd be, 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night. I'd be like, what did I eat today? I'd be like, oh, today I only had a smoothie between classes. That's a problem. I should probably, go get myself some food to, be a functioning human being. But in the 8 months between my dyskinesia and my deep brain stimulation surgery, I had lost 25 pounds. I'm 5'8". I was 130 pounds. I had gone from 130 to 105. Which was a fairly drastic transformation. And so I went to, we all thought DBS was just going to restart my stomach. DBS was supposed to fix everything. We thought it would just give me that, jump start to my stomach and it would start working. And after DBS, it was weird. I did have some sort of, resurgence of my appetite. And I'm not sure if that was just, the DBS or it was just wishful thinking and me just wanting to force it. But I had gained another 5 pounds after DBS from being able to eat more, and then I lost it all again. And then, I was once again 105 pounds. It was, Thanksgiving. I was going to have DBS in 3 weeks. And I went to the ER, and, I went to urgent care the day before Thanksgiving, and it was 5:30, and I don't know even why we did this, but the doctor called the GI consult, the on-call GI, and he said, well, we can't come in for that, but what I want to do is have you come in at 4 to 5 in the morning, go to the ER, and they'll admit you to the ER, and they'll have a GI on call who has to take rounds in the hospital, and hopefully that GI can just come see you and evaluate you and help you. And so we went in the morning, and by around 8 o'clock, the on-call doctor was being such a jerk. He didn't want to call GI. He was like, oh, well, you can go get a referral to them, and you can see them next week, and they'll figure out a diet plan with you. And I literally looked at him, I said, there is no diet. I have not eaten in 4 days. I have barely drank anything in 4 days. Yeah, I'm kind of dying here. And so he said, okay, well, I'll call GI, but it's a courtesy call if they even come. And they did, and, my miracle GI was there, and he comes in, and he says, you have Parkinson's, and he says, I'm looking at this thing, he's like, from the symptoms you're telling me, and the fact that you have PD, I know you have gastroparesis, and I want to put a feeding tube in, and I was, blown away. I thought they were going to give me, the NJ, the nose tube, and, I don't know, I still thought there was some sort of treatment. I still thought DBS was gonna make it better, and I was like, wait, you're gonna put a feeding tube in me? What? And he's just like, this isn't going away. And he said, and if it does go away, like then we can just take the tube out. No harm done, but you're losing nutritional support and you really need the feeding tube. And I still thought it was gonna get better after the second DBS, and so I was kind of blown away. And so, I get the feeding tube a week later, and so I had a feeding tube literally exactly, like, it was 2 weeks before my deep brain stimulation surgery. And so I was kind of still recovering from that when I had DBS. It was like a huge mess. But then, so about a week and a half before DBS, I started tube feeding. I started crushing out my Cinemet and putting it into my tube multiple times a day. And that's what became my life. But so I always had to do tube feed for 24 hours a day because I was never able to take that much volume into my J tube to where I could just take breaks from tube feeding. I mean, it was like 20 to 22 hours really. And it was just that it had to be sort of trickled in at a slow rate. And I was doing 75 milliliters an hour. If you think about it, a cup, just a cup of water, is about 230. And so if you think about 75, you'll get a cup of water in 3.5 hours, basically. So it's not very fast. But that was what I needed. So to get enough volume of tube feed formula, I had to do it all that long. And so I knew about the dietary Cinemet protein interaction. But I, for some reason, hadn't looked up the actual mechanism, which is really out of character for me. I usually look up everything. I usually know how everything works. But I thought it was something about how it, interacts in your stomach. I thought there was some sort of, maybe, an enzymatic deactivation in your stomach. I don't really know, the exact thing. So I assumed that because they were going in with the J-tube, it was always flushed down, the tube never touched. I guess when I'd stop it for meds, I'd flush water through it. It'd push them the feed down, and then the medicine. So, I figured that interaction wasn't really there. But after I had DBS, I still had a lot of symptoms that were really troubling. The most troubling to me definitely was sensory overload. Sometimes when it'd flare, certain fabrics that would touch my legs would just be hell. It'd be electric shocks going up my body. That happens a lot. To different sensations. Loud noises would be my body would shut down. Pain, too. I was having really, really bad pain. I mean, my pain got so bad, to where I'm actually on a fentanyl patch. I need round-the-clock pain care. It's gotten really bad. And just all those things. I was still having off times. And it was really bad. And so, even though, my major motor symptoms were there, these non-motor symptoms were still really flaring. And of course, the gastroparesis got worse. Gastroparesis developed into digestive tract paralysis. And I could no longer take tube food. And so I started on TPN. But I was running TPN during the day so I could stay hydrated. And then when we finally realized that the problem isn't dietary protein, it's dietary protein once it's broken down at the enzymatic border, the blood-brain barrier, we realized that I've basically been deactivating my Cinemet for the past 8 months. Whoops. That also explains why the past couple months had just gotten so bad. It was this perfect storm of me not properly having Cinemet and just everything. And so now I started tube food at night, or tube food and TPN at night. I still do a little bit of tube feeding. I get about 250 milliliters of tube food. But I've been doing that and TPN at night. And then I get IV saline during the day. I'm running it right now because I just took a shower, and if I don't run it right now, I'm just going to keep being dizzy. But IV saline is just a 250 milliliter bolus to start with, and for now, hopefully eventually I can either basically my either get off of it or have to need more, but I'm hoping to eventually get off of it. I'm also running Pedialyte through my J-tube, to try to replenish some of those electrolytes. But yeah, I'm just doing the best I can to stay hydrated during the day. It is really nice not having to be connected to one for the whole day. Really nice. Just for my bolus. It's so great to not have to put it in a backpack and sling it over my shoulder and take it everywhere with me. Um, but yeah, so that's been good. It's hard because I guess I just wanted to share this story because with my DBS, we sort of thought it was gonna be the end all cure. Obviously, it's not. I mean, it's huge. I would never trade my DBS for anything. Not having those major motor symptoms, the dystonia, bradykinesia, rigidity, tremors, everything. I mean, DBS is the only reason that I'm up and walking. It pulled me out of stage 4, and I'm forever thankful for it. But we definitely ignored those non-motor symptoms. No, internal tremors too. It was internal tremors. Since I switched to nighttime TPN, I haven't had internal tremors just buzzing through my body, which has been beautiful because those are so awful and I don't even know how to describe them in words except for your bones just vibrating. It's horrible. And so doing TPN at night and not deactivating my Cinematte with a protein has just helped me tremendously. But so the reason that I wanted to share this video is to talk about the perfect storm of Parkinson's that just completely accelerated my disease. Most people last 5 to 10 years without dyskinesia. I only lasted 2. But I really do think that a huge part of my decline was because of the gastroparesis. And I will literally scream it out of the heavens over and over again that people with Parkinson's, if you have any kind of stomach issues, to go get tested for gastroparesis because it has almost killed me so many times. And I always say it would have been nice to know when I just didn't have an appetite. Because there are diet and things that you can do, but it accelerated my disease so fast. And there's other methods of medication that you can use to get around the GI tract. I mean, I really wish they were developing more medications that aren't just pills that go into your stomach. But there's Nupro patch. There's other things, other methods, and so it's kind of okay, I want to get as many people diagnosed with this as I can, because it can really, really just be a horrendous experience. If you know going in all these things that I didn't know, if you know that dietary protein through a J tube can mess it up, well then that's helpful. I wish I hadn't been deactivating my Cinematte for the past 8 months. Also, the other thing that's happened to me recently, the reason that the past couple weeks were horrible, Comtan. I got Comtan from my neurologist, and nowhere on the bottle does it say extended release, but there is a coating that is not supposed to be J-tube crushed, and I wouldn't have found out about it if my neuro hadn't called the pharmacist. When I was crushing Comtan, putting it into my J-tube, and it was hell, I was doubled over in pain. Also, my last video I talked about Duopa. I want Duopa. I already have a J-tube, but my neurologist hasn't been trained in Duopa yet. So that's the thing that she agrees that will help me in the future. She really thinks I'm a good candidate for Duopa, especially since I already have the J-tube. All they'd have to do is sit me up at the pump, but neurologists have to be trained in it. No one in the Kaiser group has been trained in Duopa yet. Whoops. So yeah. When they do, I'll be one of the first to get it probably. So yeah, that's where I'm at, and that's sort of this crazy story of the perfect storm of gastroparesis and Parkinson's, that I hope to help some people avoid. Alright, thanks for watching. Bye.